When it comes to networking, you probably heard of the term MAC address a lot. So in this lecture, I'm going to cover what do we mean by MAC address, what it's used for, and how to change it. MAC address stands for Media Access Control. It's a permanent, physical, and unique address assigned to network interfaces by the device manufacturer. So whether you have a wireless card or a wired or Ethernet card, each one of these network cards come with a specific address that is unique to this card. So there is no two devices in the world that would have the same MAC address, and this address will always be the same to this specific device. Even if you unplug it from your computer, connect it to another computer, then this network device will always have the same address. So you might already know that the IP address is used in the internet to identify computers and communicate between devices on the internet. The MAC address is used within the network to identify devices and transfer data between devices. So each piece of data or packet that is sent within the network contains a source MAC and a destination MAC. Therefore, this packet would flow from the source MAC to the destination MAC. So, because this is a physical unique address to each interface, to each network device, and because it is used to identify devices, then changing it will make you anonymous on the network. Not only that, but the MAC address is often used by filters to prevent or allow devices to connect to networks and do specific tasks on the network. So being able to change your MAC address to another device's MAC address will allow you to impersonate this device and allow you to do things that you might not be able to do. So you'd be able to bypass filters or connect to networks that only specific devices with specific MAC addresses can connect to, and you will also be able to hide your identity. Now, changing the MAC address is very simple. So let me show you how to do that. First of all, I'm going to use the ifconfig command to list all the network interfaces available on my Kali machine. What I mean by network interface is any device that allows us to connect to a network. So an example is a Wi-Fi card or an Ethernet card and so on. So you can see, first of all, we have ETH0, and this is a virtual interface created by VirtualBox when we set Kali to use a NAT network. So you can see the interface name is ETH0. You can see it has an IP address because, like I said, it's connected to a network. So if we go here, we can see it's saying wired connected. So this is the interface that represents the wired network that Kali is connected to, which is actually a virtual NAT network. You can also see the net mask, the broadcast, and a really important piece of information, which is the ether. This is the MAC address of this virtual interface. Now you can see similar information for my other two interfaces, the LO and the LAN 0. The only thing is, you can see for both of these interfaces, we do not have an IP address. And the main reason for that is because none of these interfaces is connected to a network. Now LO is a default interface created by Linux, and LAN 0 is my real wireless adapter, so I can use it to connect to Wi-Fi networks. But if I go on the network in here, you'll see Wi-Fi is not connected because I actually didn't connect to any network, and that's why it does not have an IP address. Now this doesn't matter because what we want to do is to just change the MAC address, which again is shown here under the ether part. So similar to what you're seeing here for ETH0. Now, in order to change any of the values that you see in here, you have to first disable the interface. So, in this example, we want to change the MAC address. So that is represented by the ether, and the value is right here. So in order to disable an interface, we're going to do ifconfig, followed by the interface name, which is LAN0 in my example, followed by down to disable it. Now, if I hit enter, you'll see the command runs with no errors, so it means that it got executed properly. And the next thing that we need to do is to change the option that we want to change. And in this example, we want to change the ether, which is the MAC address. So first we're going to type ifconfig. We're going to type the interface that we want to change one of its options. Then we're going to type the option that we want to change. And what we want to change is the hardware address. So we're going to do HW ether. Then we're going to give it the address that we want to change the MAC address to. So for example, I'm going to use 001122334455. Very simple command. We're doing ifconfig LAN0 to select the interface that we want to change its option. We want to set the hardware address, and we want to set this address to this specific address. So you can use any address that you want following the same format shown here. Just make sure your address starts with 00. So I'm going to hit enter, and again we don't see any error messages, so it means the command got executed properly. And finally, we just need to enable the interface because we disabled it by doing ifconfig LAN0 down, so we just need to do ifconfig LAN0 up to enable it. Now the interface is enabled, and if we do ifconfig again and look at the other part in here, you can see that it is changed to the MAC address that we specified. Now this is done and your MAC address is changed. Now you can go ahead and start using the interface, and it will appear to have this MAC address instead of its original MAC address. And like I said, this can be useful in so many scenarios. Now keep in mind, the MAC address will revert back to the original one once you restart the computer, because we're only changing the MAC address in memory. We're not really changing the physical MAC address. But if your MAC address is resetting to the original one without restarting, then something is going wrong, and it's probably happening because your network manager is resetting the MAC address. Not everybody will face this issue, so I'm not going to cover it in this lecture. But if you face this issue, if your MAC address goes back to the original one without restarting the computer, then check out the YouTube video in the resources of this lecture. It will show you how to fix this issue. From the previous lectures, we learned the basics of how networks work. We learned that devices on the same network communicate with each other using packets. So regardless of what you do on the network, whether you're watching a video, whether you're logging into a website, sending chat messages, sending emails, regardless of what you're doing, all the data is sent as packets. Now in the network, devices ensure that these packets go in the right direction using the MAC address. So each packet has a source MAC and a destination MAC, and it flows from the source to the destination. So in this example, we have the client, it has this MAC, we have the access point, which has this MAC, and as an example, if this client wanted to send a packet to the router, it will set the destination MAC to the router's MAC address. Therefore, by default, each device only receives data that has the destination MAC as its own MAC address. But if you remember, I said in wireless networks, if you're within range, then you'll be able to capture all of this communication because these packets are literally sent in the air. So we can just capture them even if they do not have our MAC address as the destination MAC. To do this, we need to change the mode of operation of our wireless interface so that it operates in monitor mode. So let me show you what I mean. If I go to my computer here and run iwconfig this time, so we see an ifconfig which lists all the interfaces. We can use iwconfig to see the wireless interfaces only. And you can see we have LAN 0 right here, which is my external wireless adapter. And you can see the mode of this adapter is set to managed. What this means is basically this is the default mode of all wireless devices. And what it means is this device will only capture packets that has the destination MAC as the MAC address of this device. So basically, it will only capture devices that are directed to my Kali machine. But this is not what we want. What we want is to be able to capture all the packets that are within our range, even if they are sent to the router and even if they are set to another device. So to do this, we need to set the mode to monitor mode instead of managed mode. So, as usual, before you can change the options of your interface, you have to disable it. And previously, we've seen we can do that by doing ifconfig, the device name, which is LAN 0 in my case, down. Then we can enable monitor mode. But before we do that, I'm actually going to run a command to kill any process that could interfere with using my interface in monitor mode. So the command that I'm going to run right now is not mandatory, but running it will actually give you better results when you come to running the attacks that you will learn as we go in the course. So this command is going to be airmon-ng check kill. Now you'll notice when you run this command, it will actually kill the network manager that usually runs in here. So you'll completely lose your internet connection. But this is no problem because we will only need to be in monitor mode when we are running pre-connection attacks. So attacks that do not require us to connect to any network. So we actually do not need internet connection to run any of the attacks that require monitor mode. Now we're going to enable monitor mode. So we're going to do iwconfig followed by the interface name that we want to enable monitor mode on, which is LAN 0. We're going to say that I want to change the mode and I want to change that to monitor. So very simple command. We're using iwconfig to change the mode. We're given the name of the interface that we want to change its mode. We're saying I want to change the mode and I want to set it to monitor mode. Now if I hit enter, you'll see the command will run with no errors, which means the command got executed properly. And finally, we'll need to enable the interface, again similar to what we did when we changed the MAC address. So we just have to do ifconfig LAN 0 up. That's done. Now, if I run iwconfig again, you will see that the mode is set to monitor now. So basically, this interface now can be used to capture any packet that is within our range, not only the packets that are directed to this computer. That's why in the future, you'll see how we can use it to sniff packets, to analyze them, and even break into networks. So in the future, if I say use your interface in monitor mode, this is what I mean. You'll basically have to enable monitor mode as shown in here. Now, I've also included a YouTube video in the resources of this lecture to show an alternative method to enable monitor mode. Just in case you got errors with this method or you tried to follow something that I do in the next lectures and it didn't work, then you can come back and try the alternative method. But if this worked and if monitor mode is enabled successfully, then you don't need to watch that video. You can just continue with the course. One more thing to keep in mind, not all wireless adapters support monitor mode. So for this to work, you need to make sure that your actual adapter supports monitor mode. There are a number of adapters that support that, and I've included another video, again in the resources, of me talking about wireless adapters, how to pick the best one, and which ones that I recommend and use when I'm testing the security of networks.